Well, it's 46 minutes past 7 o'clock in the morning. Welcome to the Media Round Table today. My name is Solomon Serwanja and I'm your host as usual. And we'll be discussing two big stories of the week. That is stealing from the sick, an investigation that was done by NBS and the BBC that reveals the whole corruption in the medical profession. There are some people who are stealing drugs from hospitals, and that's a story that has been making headlines. Yesterday, Parliament discussed it, and the other day actually, and they said that the Health Committee should look into it. We'll also look at the BOU saga. Some people have been arrested and given bond, and then was money printed? What was in the extra 5 pallets that were received at the Entebbe International Airport? Civil Aviation Authority saying we did not check, and therefore we don't know what was in those pallets. Let me introduce my panelists this morning. Simon Kagwanjala, it's good to have you on the show this morning. Putting on a red tie, it's good to see you, sir.
I'm copying from you.
How have you been, buddy?
Great. After this comical week.
Okay, we'll get into that later on. Dismas Nkunda, veteran and celebrated journalist, it's good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you, and congratulations on your investigation. Right?
Thank you very much. I am so honored.
Surprised you're still alive.
I am still alive. God still wants me alive, and some people, so let's see how it is. And Idris Chigundu, managing editor of the Nile Post, many thanks for honoring our invitation this morning, sir.
It's a pleasure to always be on Media Roundtable.
Thank you very much, sir.
This is one of those hilarious stories. Bank of Baroda gives someone a dead man alone.
But you know Idris's stories, they are really...
But even his column lately is so funny. The Rob, is it the Rob?
The Rob.
Very
All right.
interesting story.
Dalton Kawesa, deputy managing editor of Next Media Services. It's good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our boss.
We have to meet us.
Victoria Nyeko, columnist with the Daily Monitor and African Queen. It's good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and good morning, viewers. It's nice to be here as always.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for joining us this morning. All right, gentlemen. On Monday, there was an expose that was aired internationally and nationally here. The stealing from the sick investigation that goes, ask anyone on the street and they'll tell you that there are no drugs. Tedi madagala marwari, whichever language you want to put it. But they'll tell you that there are no drugs in hospitals. When you go to the national medical stores in Entebbe, Moses Kamabale takes you around and you see pallets and pallets of medicine in the warehouses, and the whole sophisticated system at the national medical stores, the cameras, the security, the intelligence, and he tells you can't beat the system, and we have the drugs, but he says we supply according to the requests that we get from the hospitals. And so we wanted to understand where is the missing link. So NMS claims we deliver the drugs. People are claiming there are no drugs in hospitals. So what really happens in the middle of there? And so a team headed by yours truly and Godfrey Badevi, Kasim Mohammed, and the whole production crew went out to investigate this with the BBC and NBS, and the rest is history. I'm sure all of us watched the story, and if you have not, it's on YouTube and it's on every media platform, NBS, the BBC, on Facebook and Twitter. It's everywhere, so I'm sure everyone watched, so I want to assume that. Let me start with Simon Kagwanjala here. Simon, you watched this story.
Certainly.
You've been discussing it all week. What did you pick out? What stood out for you?
First, I must really congratulate you and your entire team. You put up a fantastic job. This story, the entire story, thank God it's finally aired. There have been lots of questions, and people had gotten to the extent of saying, did we tell them a lie? Was it a Chiwani of sorts? It's finally here. The entire story reveals the deep-seated culture of theft in the country. We're such a stealing nation. When I watched this, I said, oh, my goodness. So, what is left to steal in this country? Coatem is crossing borders. Rumatem. People are taking pride in whatever they are doing. And along the way, I felt a bit sorry and nervous for the interviewees. I must really say, I fear for their lives, and I commend them for standing up to say at least a word or two. What is very fundamental here is the big question on what next. I know it has triggered huge responses from government, but it's likely to be yet another story. It has happened, yes, it has happened. As we get to the bottom of, to the heart of this, you realize there is a cartel. There's a cartel which we are yet to break into, and perhaps I would ask you to get into another assignment. I dare you to expose that cartel.
Njala, you should continue from where I've stopped. So,
stop this thing of Obwana Bayebuto. Go in there.
it is you always says that.
Help us to expose that cartel. I know we know them. I know you know them. And we know them pretty well.
You mentioned them.
Okay. Justice Katusi coined this thing of phenomenon of small fish, big fish. The people who are stealing our drugs are big fish. But unfortunately, we trap the small fish, who are the tail end of the entire chain. We really need to get deeper into this story. It is embarrassing the country, but we have no option but to expose. And lastly, what I will really say, what I must again say, heads must roll. Heads must roll. As a country, we should at least concentrate on someone and say, the buck starts and stops with you. I pray this documentary is not exonerating anyone, because NMS is equally guilty in this. Their role should not be stopping at procuring and distributing.
But that's the act. The act that established them actually says that their role is to procure and distribute. That's where their mandate stops, by the way. That's where Kamabali tells, and it's clear. He tells you, I buy, I deliver. That's where my mandate stops.
Let's look at the politics in the entire chain. All these bodies, NDA, NMS, State House Health Monitoring Unit, most of them are in there for survival. But if you put them aside, they will tell you something.
Thanks. Vicky, let me come to you. You know, during this whole investigation, a senior officer in government told me that they had traveled to Burundi, and they got sick, and they went to a pharmacy. A senior government officer, they went to a pharmacy but to buy, you know, some medicine, and they were given UG, not for sale drugs. and this senior officer looked at them like, is this
I think
UG?
they realized they were Ugandans. They gave them customized.
Vicky, let me come to you. What really stood out for you in this investigation?
I think the investigation was brilliant, Solomon. Congratulations, you and your team, for that. I think for me, there were maybe two or three things that we knew. We knew that there were no government drugs in hospitals. We knew that people have to go outside in private pharmacies to pay for drugs. And we know that most people in rural areas just don't have the money to pay for these drugs. And so the 30,000 plus people per year, as you mentioned in your investigation, are dying and continue dying, and about 30 children per day. What we didn't know, which this footage revealed, was the mafia. The mafia and the extent of the reach that the mafia has. For example, we didn't know that the military question or the security question, and we still don't know how far up the chain that goes. We didn't know that actually you can travel to Congo and buy government drugs in pharmacies. We didn't know that actually people, is it document officers, nurses, well, it wasn't a nurse, I think it was a document officer, can requisition or inflate requisitions for drugs. We didn't know that. And also the fact that it was surprising for me to find out when the CEO of National Medical Stores talked about, I think it was Moses Kamabari said that, look, we have all these security cameras here. There is no way that drugs can be stolen from here. And then he says, but the biggest challenge is that we don't have the legal mandate to follow up. Yeah. A requisition comes in, we answer the requisition, we supply, no questions asked. So for me, that was a big eye-opener, and you begin to wonder and say, but How is that even possible? But then when you go further into the investigation and we find out from the monitoring team that Dr. Jackson, I think his name was Jackson Ojara,
yeah.
and he says, well, look, we have done some investigation in previous years. Here is some of the evidence that we have in store, but we can't do much because we are also stuck. We don't have an operation budget to carry out operations. So then you ask yourself, then where does government even begin? Njala asked a question that, look, what next? But sincerely, what can government even do, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And
because the impression is some of these people, the higher people, must be in government.
Dr. Ojera actually said that they are financially constrained. Their budget to go out to the field every
There's
single...
no operation
like
budget.
operation costs are a bit low, and they can only do so much. But let me come to Dismas. Dismas, you know, one of the things that came out clearly in this investigation is that no one is policing these medicines. NMS says, I deliver, and that's where it stops. Talk to me about what stood out for you in the investigation.
What stood out? A couple of things. Of course, it was a very good piece of investigation, the kind that when I was still young I would have done. But the things that stood out was not only the mafia that Vic speaks about, but more especially how individuals who are attached to government institutions. For me, when I saw a motorcycle of Ministry of Health delivering a consignment of drugs when boxes, when it's supposed to be doing work that
funded by government.
Funded by government, but at the same time delivering what is supposed to be used by patients of the people of Uganda. It struck me that actually, and on top of other things that we're witnessing over a period of time, that actually we don't have systems. The systems have broken down completely. If medicine, I know national medical stores, they can have their argument that we deliver, but then how about the different aspects of he spoke about the monitoring the departments in the State House, the national the national medical what is it called,
National
Drug Authority, then the referral individuals who are heading health centers. What is their role? So it means that everybody has seen and said, you know what, things have collapsed. We also have to line up our pockets quickly, and then the rest God will sort us out.
Well, I somewhat agree with you, because one of the weaknesses that we found, Idris, is that, I mean, when you look at, for example, the statistics that come through, the procurement, the amount of medicine that is delivered at the hospital, and you compare it with the number of patients that are received for that particular time. For example, if so many boxes of Lumatem, which are anti-malarials, are delivered to a district hospital X, and you look at also the number of malaria patients that came in that particular quarter, they just don't balance. And no one actually, I don't know if there are efforts, if any, that really follow that. Let's look at these two figures and see if all this works out. Your highlights of the investigation.
Solomon, for me, the first thing I have to point out that was a very brilliant piece of investigative journalism. And here I'm speaking as someone who has been in the trenches of journalism. I thought that's the kind of journalism that many of our media houses, the industry has sort of been lacking. Of course, it requires enormous resources. It requires patience. But again, in the long term, it's deeply rewarding. I think, for me, one of the things I first take out from that is that we really, journalism in this country needs to go back to that. I mean, often we are the kind of stories we do, and when you read papers, I mean, I don't know whether because of the high turnover of senior journalists, I think we have been lacking that. I think on that front, I think you did very well. It was a breath of fresh air. But having said that, when you look at the subject of the investigation, I think for me nothing, I'm being honest, nothing really surprised me. There's nothing new that I really learned about drug theft, something that has always been there with us. And this investigation could have been done for each and every sector, whether you went to UPE funds, whether you went to to roads, whether you went to energy, talk of any sector. So me in that respect, I really think that this investigation just underlined the fact that we don't have any systems of accountability, systems to ensure that public funds are used the way they should. It in fact reinforced the fact that corruption is the way through which this government operates. Actually, without corruption and without stealing of funds in many of these things, without corruption in the road sector, without corruption in the drug sector, I think many of these things will be dysfunctional. I don't know whether it makes sense. Corruption is what oils this government, and it has oiled. Yeah, it just underlined it. It's something that we knew. I know we may talk about how people are shocked that, like my seniors talked about how a government motorcycle could be used to ferry. I saw that the Gavi Alliance. But for me, I mean, we all know, we have seen government vehicles carrying so many merchandise that they're not supposed to do. I mean, we have seen ambulances being used for, we have seen pickups. Yes, so for me as a person, as someone who has been in this country for more than 35 years, I don't think there's anything that really shocked me about the revelations. I knew, I've seen it at my local drug store. I've seen that medicine. Personally, I once went to buy medicine, and I was given, I think it was Coatem, and I was given one with the UG mark. I told the lady that I can't pay for this. It has UG, it's not for sale. I had a deal, I said, I'm not paying for it. He said, no, but you see, it's because she was just a worker, she didn't own it. She said, but you see, madam said, you see. I said, I can't. I said, actually, I'm taking it to police. I'm not supposed to, why are you supposed to charge me for this? It's clear, not for sale. But then I understood. For me, I'm not going to pretend that I'm shocked about what your revelation did. I think I knew it's there. But for me, for me, like I said, the major takeout is that I think we need to go back to that, to the core of it. I think it was a very brilliant piece of investigative journalism, the explanatory kind of the journalism of patience. You don't rush. I think you took over 6 months.
About 10 months.
About 10 months.
Yeah.
And I think in that way, given the impact, given the fact that Parliament is looking into it, and it's very rewarding. And I think for me it's a call to media houses to prioritize investigative journalism, to sink more money in investigative journalism.
Thanks, Idris. Dalton, you're the last one to submit on this issue, and then we can do what we take home from this. One of the things that is clear in this investigation, Dalton, is that, one, the whole of government knows that drugs have been stolen. More reason that the president established a State House Health Monitoring Unit. That is their core, to follow medical service delivery and also try to ensure that that drugs are not stolen, that medical workers are in office in time and they're doing what they're supposed to do. And so it is a problem that has been going on. Now, even though State House Health Monitoring Unit, by the way, I should commend, have done an amazing job, because when you visit their offices in Naguru, you find they don't even have spaces to sit. And the boxes everywhere, you know. There are boxes everywhere, and they literally are looking at that. But one of the things that Oraja told me, Dr. Ojera told me, he said, Jackson Ojera, he said, look, we cannot cover everywhere. Like, we don't have enough capacity. We are struggling to do these operations, which are also deadly. Remember the other time they went and arrested guys who were stealing drugs in coffins? You remember that story? Yes. It was a big story. Yeah. But it comes through covert operation. It takes money. Do you feel that there is commitment to fight this fight?
Well, you know, it has so many layers. Before I even answer the question, Solomon, while Chigundo says that he knows, and everyone knows it, I want to congratulate the team. It takes a great nerve to step out there and say, I'm going to participate in this. Many journalists will not dare. Many journalists have given up on this fight, and largely also because of the financial muscle. It reminds me of a BBC reporter coined something they call chanism versus journalism. That today chanism comes from the word to churn. We just churn out information without going back to analyze something like that. And the team decided this. Let's go back to the journalism, that would influence and inform public policy. Washington Post would do one investigation, and it will take 6 months, but it would have informed policy. I'm glad that perhaps after what will happened in Parliament, it is going to inform policy. Coming to the question, in a country, in a country where there is a crisis of confidence, I would imagine today the DISO, the RDC, the PISO, if they exist,
the DHOs,
and
the VISO.
Now we have
and
MISO.
if the VISOs,
we have
I would
VISOs.
imagine.
We have
yeah.
MISO now.
So I'm saying in a country that faces the crisis of confidence, those people should be in jail before anything else. That how does this reach, and you're tasked to follow government projects, and something comes out? Because the Solomons even appear in an area, do their operations, and you, the chief of security, you don't know. How? How? What if it was a foreigner coming to expose the country to certain things, and maybe plant medical personnel to kill patients massively? What would be happening? That is the first layer. The other thing we need to look at is, I know, for instance, while NMS exonerated themselves, and you understand by the law that for them it's about procurement, and what happens, the real drug supply chain is that the recipient hospital writes a requisition to NMS and with the specification of what they want, and NMS dispatches to that respective hospital. But in between, I did a story, I think 4 years ago, and there is a lot of connivance. Because I can be from Chiruda and say, I need this kind of drug, and really, I don't need it. And I'll tell you that I don't need this drug, but you have to give it to me. So there is a chain of connivance in that area. The question is, are we doing enough effort? I think we started on the wrong foot. Around 2001, Kizza Besigye, in the campaign trail, promised to give free health care to the Ugandans. And I think out of panic button, the NRM camp thought that is a plus and said, we are going to scrap cost sharing and we shall do free drugs. They never undertook a deliberate purpose to study what it would cost. And I'm a proponent of cost sharing. While the scrapping of cost sharing gave us a warm feeling, the cold reality is people pay for drugs. And I would ask, I suspect it comes from Chisoro.
Very so.
Yes. Chisoro with the old woman or relatives have gone to the dispensaries to pay for these drugs, which are supposed to be free. That takes us for the wrong note. Imagine if we had said, there is no clear statistics of how many people access private medical facilities. Neither are there statistics to prove that there are people who do self-medication, which are many. You see? So in other words, we are dipping currency into an ocean we do not even understand. The statistics will tell you that people actually that go to these hospitals of government stagger from 41 to 49. Go and read the Ministry of Health website. It will inform you. That means, therefore, Solomon and the viewers and colleagues, that we need to have a soul search and say it's a goose chase by saying we provide as a country free medical bills, because the reality is people are paying.
All right, great submission there, and I saw the reaction on Simon Kagwanjala's face. But
You are making a lot of sense for us.
But as the team leader in this investigation, first of all, I want to say a special thank you to everyone who participated in this. I mean, Godfrey Badebi, senior cameraman and senior journalist there, Kasim Mohammed, great guy, Andy Bales, executive producer, and everyone who actually did this investigation. They were walking on the edge of death, and they risked their lives to put this story to light. And I believe that when, I always say this every time people risk their lives to uncover something, that when injustice and social evil continues to be the new normal and the good men keep quiet about it, they're betraying their own country. So if you see something bad happening, you're like, I have a young family, I fear to be killed, I have, you sort of distance yourself away from, talking about the social evil and injustice, then it is you're digging your own grave. It continues because you don't know that your parent in Kisoro will actually, they'll call you, mommy is dying, and you say take them to the nearest health center, 2 or 3, and there are no drugs. But the other day, you actually know in your own capacity that there are no drugs and people are selling them, and you're keeping quiet because you are fearing for your family. So I believe that journalism, again, is not about telling stories. It's about changing lives and changing the future of this country. So even when it means for you, Simon Kagwanjala, Dalton Kawis, and everyone on this panel to go out and do the little things that we have to do, all of us, to change, you know, the status quo and the way things are done, then we have to get out of our comfort zones and shielding ourselves and our families, and so that we can go out there and contribute to the change in this community. Which makes me come to my final call, that whether you're a lawyer or a doctor or a journalist or a vendor, you have these little things that you can do. Do little things, these small little things. All of us can work together and do the little small things to change our society. You cannot wait for government to do everything. Each one of us have a role to play. The team that I headed did their role. What have you done about it? Instead of just talking about it, do something about it. My name is Solomon Seranjo. We'll take a very short break, but we return with the BOU saga. Stay with us.